This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The Chinese premier is in Wuhan to inspect the construction of a new hospital being built to help coronavirus patients. The world reacts to the sudden death of NBA star Kobe Bryant in a helicopter crash. And families trek to unsafe wells as taps run dry in Zimbabwe's second city of Bulawayo. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. In business, foreign investors avoid the Nigerian exchange over sluggish reforms. And later, the renowned Beijing Golden Sail Musical Orchestra performs at the iconic Cape Town City Hall for Chinese Spring Festival. In our top story this hour, the death toll from the coronavirus now stands at 81. Nearly 3,000 cases have been confirmed globally, the vast majority in China. Tibet is the only region in the country without any cases. Around half of the confirmed cases are at ground zero in Wuhan, the capital of central China's Hebei province. More than 30,000 people across China are under medical observation after having had close contact with confirmed patients. There are 41 confirmed cases outside China. Thailand has 8. The United States and Australia have 5 each. Japan, Malaysia, Singapore and South Korea have 4 each, and France has confirmed 3 cases. Well, China is putting in place several measures to prevent the virus from spreading. 79 train stations have been closed, and 1,000 rail stations and passengers' temperatures are being checked at exits and entrances. Several cities and provinces have suspended interprovincial bus services, including Beijing, Shanghai and Hubei. The country's travel agencies have suspended domestic group tours, and group tours outside China will be cancelled starting today. Large public events have been cancelled, and museums along with popular tourist sites have been closed. China is also banning all forms of wildlife trade, which is thought to be the source of the coronavirus. Violators face criminal prosecution or having their businesses closed. Special fast-track routes have been set up to make it easier for emergency goods to arrive in Wuhan. China's Civil Aviation Service reports that hundreds of flights have dispatched nearly 450 tons of medical equipment across the country. Nearly half of those goods were sent to Hebei province, along with 2,000 doctors and nurses. And the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention has also started working on a vaccine. It says researchers have successfully separated the virus and are now working on screening the virus strain. Well, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang is now in Wuhan, this at President Xi Jinping's request to inspect the coronavirus response. Li has also visited the construction site of a new hospital to treat coronavirus patients in Wuhan. Premier Li has declared that the nation will spare no efforts to help the city complete the new hospital by February 3rd. The new facility will provide 1,500 beds.
Let's build this hospital, which is urgently needed here in Wuhan. Not only Wuhan residents, but also all the people in the country are closely watching this. We are all your backups. What do you need? Any difficulties? Any supplies that need to be deployed? What is required to guarantee the construction? You can just tell us any problems. Everything can be solved.
Meanwhile, many coronavirus patients are currently being treated at Wuhan's Jinintan Hospital. The director, Zhang Dingyu, and the head of the virus ward, Xie Jian, have spoken about the situation.
So far, there are 423 patients in the hospital, and 51 of them are in critical condition, and 72 of them are in serious condition. About 20 to 30 patients are expected to recover soon. Now the most critical issue is the lack of doctors.
About 20% of the virus patients are in serious condition, and most of them are middle-aged and elderly.
Now, public transportation, outbound flights and railway trips have been suspended in Wuhan. That's since last week. Authorities, though, are now cancelling all outbound travel services for Chinese citizens starting on Thursday, including services used to go abroad. Officials say no Chinese passengers have left Wuhan to travel to other countries or regions for the past 4 days. Self-service travel permit machines for Hong Kong, Macau and Taiwan have been closed until further notice. And some passenger trains have been suspended until February 26th. The Egyptian embassy in China says that so far no Egyptians have been infected with coronavirus. Cairo has established a hotline for its citizens in Wuhan and surrounding cities. Meanwhile, the Egyptian health minister has visited the quarantine office at Cairo airport to follow up on inspection procedures for flights coming from China. Here's CGTN's Adel Al-Mahroui with more.
Egypt says it was one of the first countries in the world to respond to the World Health Organization's warnings about the coronavirus in China. Airports have been instructed to follow the international health regulations. All quarantine offices in Egypt have been instructed to collect names and addresses of passengers and flight crews. Their governorships' municipalities get informed to monitor their health conditions for 14 days, the incubation period for the virus. Egypt's health minister Hala Zaid made the announcement during her visit to Cairo. The minister reviewed the regulations, procedures taken and health facilities available at the airport.
We treat all waste from planes or any other materials coming from the infected areas as hazardous wastes and get rid of them accordingly. We've increased our alert status in Egypt and multiplied our health staff in all ports. We've also increased the number of standby beds in our quarantine hospitals, just in case a patient who needs care emerges.
Meanwhile, the Egyptian embassy in China says no infections have been reported among Egyptians so far. The embassy says it is collecting data to get information about the number of Egyptians in Wuhan and neighboring cities. Once collected, the Egyptian Foreign Ministry says it will share the information of Egyptians in these cities with the Chinese government. Egypt so far estimates to have 315 citizens in Wuhan, most of whom are university students. The embassy in China has established a hotline for its citizens to report in cases of emergencies. Adel Al-Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Now, Côte d'Ivoire is also on high alert for the coronavirus. A 34-year-old is currently in isolation and under observation. The student living in Beijing arrived in Abidjan on Saturday showing flu-like symptoms like coughing and sneezing. The student has lived in Beijing for 5 years. The Ministry of Health and Public Hygiene says they've tested her for the virus and results will be released on Wednesday.
She started to have a fever around December 22nd when she was in China. She came on vacation and she had a fever, but we could not conclude that she was sick. She told us who the president of the Ivorian student in Beijing was, and she said 500 Ivorians are living in China. She asked the Ivorian high authorities to follow the Ivorian students who are at the epicenter of the coronavirus because she's worried about the 75 other Ivorian students. You see, this case will allow us to be more vigilant.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Well, to a story that is making international headlines, the sports world is in mourning following the death of basketball legend Kobe Bryant. Tributes have been pouring in from around the United States and indeed other parts of the world. Kobe was killed in a helicopter crash in California on Sunday. Political leaders and sports stars have taken to Twitter to express their shock and sadness at the death of the 41-year-old. The NBA star, his teenage daughter and others were killed when their helicopter went down in Calabasas, about 48 kilometers northwest of downtown Los Angeles. Bryant was an 18-time NBA All-Star who won 5 championships and became one of the greatest basketball players of his generation during a 20-year career with the Los Angeles Lakers. He retired in 2016 as the 3rd leading scorer in NBA history and held that spot until LeBron James overtook him on Saturday night. Now, Kobe Bryant was immensely popular, certainly in the United States, but also in China, a place he often called his home away from home. Well, CGTN's Gerald Tan takes a look back at his illustrious career and his global appeal.
Black Mama's ready.
In the world of basketball, Kobe Bryant had nothing less than a slam dunk of a career. For 20 years, he starred with the Los Angeles Lakers, racking up one accolade after another. The youngest player in NBA history when he was drafted out of high school, 5 NBA championships, 18 All-Star games, 2 Olympic golds, playing for the United States. It wasn't always smooth sailing. In 2003, Bryant was accused of rape. Although all charges were eventually dropped, the long-running case tarnished his image. To get through this dark period, Bryant created an alter ego, the Black Mamba, a persona which would form part of his identity in the latter years.
What's going on? I think we should make a movie about the Black Mamba. Like a film? Yeah, about your alter ego.
If Bryant was a star in his native United States, he was a gigastar in China. His celebrity gave rise to Mamba Mania, in which clothing, merchandise and basically anything he endorsed became a goldmine. And Bryant gave back, spearheading charitable works and being named cultural ambassador. Bryant was never out of the headlines. Just a day before the fatal helicopter crash, he was overtaken as the 3rd leading scorer on the NBA's all-time scoring list by LeBron James. Earlier in the week, he shared his mantra as a professional athlete.
As a competitive person, the thing that I do is look forward. You can't change things that were. You can't change the outcome. What you can do is control what you can control, which is your performance.
Before his retirement in 2016, Bryant wrote a poem titled Dear Basketball. It became the basis of an animated short film he narrated, which went on to win an Oscar.
I fell in love with you. A love so deep, I gave you my all.
A lifetime of achievement, earning him the status of Kobe Bryant, basketball legend. Gerald Tan, CGTN, Washington.
Love you always, Kobe.
Well, for more on the life and legacy of Kobe Bryant, we're now joined here in studio by CGTN's Richard Nta, a fellow anchor and a basketball enthusiast. Richard, the death of Kobe Bryant seems to resonate with people on a very personal level across the world. Just from your perspective, how much was Kobe Bryant an influence to you and your interest in basketball?
Well, first of all, Lindy, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I thought it was going to be an easy interview. I even found myself crying in the bathroom. You know, when you think of all the images and what Kobe Bryant has done for basketball, it's hard to wake up to a world without Kobe Bryant. You just have to look at the internet, look at all the tweets. The whole world is affected by his loss, more so by the way he has passed on. When you think of Kobe Bryant, you think of a warrior,
someone
a
invincible.
gladiator, that's it, someone invincible. And for him to go out like this, it's unreal. And it's affected me greatly.
I can imagine, Richard. And of course, we know that he had an incredible career for the LA Lakers, 2 decades in which, of course, during that time, he inspired many generations of basketball players. But what do you think his influence has been over the game here in Africa?
Well, Kobe Bryant's success has basically said there's no shortcuts in life. You've got to put in the work. I mean, this is a guy that came from high school, entered the NBA at 17 years old, with one goal in mind, which was to be the greatest player on the planet. Michael Jordan was there. Kobe Bryant came out puffing his chest out. A lot of people thought he was crazy. He rubbed people the wrong way. But eventually, people gave in to his hard work, his ethic, his consistency. He wanted to be like Mike. He talked like Mike. And then eventually he carved out his own image, Mamba mentality, and he never cheated the sport, gave 110% through injuries, 5 NBA titles, and an Academy Award. No one's ever been able to do that or match that.
And of course, he will go down in history as a legend, no doubt about that. But what do you think he'll most be remembered for?
Kobe Bryant is going to be remembered for hard work, dedication, and excellence. He applied the kind of attention to detail that a neurosurgeon would apply to his craft. He applied that to basketball. He sacrificed time with his family, time with his friends. Yes, he rubbed people the wrong way because he was so single-minded and focused on what he wanted to achieve. He never cheated the sport. He's going to be remembered for excellence, excellence.
And when it comes to the sport itself, do you think he left it better than he found it? How did he change the NBA itself?
He changed the NBA. First of all, his brand is global. Everybody wants to wear his shoes. It's time to bring out my handkerchiefs. Everybody wants to wear his shoes, his jersey. Yeah, I mean, what more can I say? Everybody, when they think of excellence, they think of Kobe Bryant, and they think of that work they need to put in to be there. Inspiration, his name is mentioned on playgrounds all over the world, all over the world. Is a tragic, tragic loss to the planet.
Indeed it is. Well, thank you so much, Richard.
Thanks
for sharing your
me.
insights into the life and legacy of Kobe Bryant. Well, time now for us to take a short break. We'll be right back after this. Coming up, Ethiopia, Eritrea and Somalia are meeting in Asmara amid efforts to boost regional peace. And families trek to unsafe wells as taps run dry in Zimbabwe's second city of Bulawayo.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference. We start in Mali now, where 19 soldiers have been killed in a pre-dawn attack on an army camp in central Mali. 5 others were wounded after attackers entered the camp near the village of Sokolo and opened fire. The army says the militants also destroyed several structures and left soon after. Reinforcements have been sent to the area as a search for the assailants continues. A Malian plane has also been deployed to the scene for monitoring. The identity of the attackers remains unclear. However, Islamist groups with links to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State are known to operate in arid central and northern Mali. From this region, attacks have been launched on civilians as well as soldiers across the Sahel. International coalitions and regional governments have struggled to contain the spread of jihadists across West Africa. Meanwhile, Ethiopia, Eritrea and Somalia are meeting in the Eritrean capital of Asmara to continue talks aimed at boosting regional peace. Joint meetings by leaders of the 3 countries began in 2018, with the nations pledging to respect each other's independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity. CGTN's Coletta Wanjoyi reports from Addis Ababa.
The meeting of President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo of Somalia, President Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia will discuss, among other issues, regional peace and security. The 3 countries agreed to cooperate in 2018. The same year, Ethiopia had reached out to Eritrea to end their over 2-decade enmity. A border war between the 2 countries between 1998 and 2000 led to the death of at least 100,000 people, and later, total stalemate between the 2 states. And later, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed encouraged Eritrea and Somalia to normalize their relations. Ethiopia had also fallen out with Somalia's government when it signed a port management agreement with the semi-autonomous region of Somaliland. Eritrea and Somalia had suffered over a decade of animosity following accusations that the government in Asmara was sponsoring terrorists to topple the Somalia government. In 2018, the 3 countries formed a joint high-level committee to coordinate their cooperation. Coletta Wanjoyi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has reiterated that a military intervention will not solve the conflict in Libya. His Algerian counterpart, Abdelmajid Tebboune, also weighed into the matter, saying he's trying to mediate a political settlement to the conflict. The two leaders have been meeting in Algiers to discuss the conflict that threatens regional stability. Libya has been mired in chaos since 2011 after the death of its leader, Muammar Gaddafi. The conflict deepened in April after renegade commander Khalifa Haftar launched an assault to seize the capital, Tripoli. Tripoli is the base of the UN-recognized Government of National Accord, led by Fayez al-Sarraj. Elsewhere, Washington is preparing to host what many hope will be the final round of Nile talks. Foreign and water resource ministers from Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia will be participating in the meetings scheduled to start on Tuesday. They'll also be attended by the World Bank. The three countries had agreed on the principles of a draft deal. Here's Adel El-Mahri with more.
An Egyptian ministerial delegation has flown to Washington, D.C. on Sunday for the final round of the Nile water talks. U.S. Department of Treasury has earlier announced an agreement between Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia on the principles of a deal.
The previous agreement is not sufficient to reach a deal. It has only set some headlines that were agreed upon. It included some general regulations to fill the reservoir for the dam, but it didn't end the differences on the regulations for operation of the dam. Egypt wants to preserve its rights in the water. Without the Nile, Egypt is a desert.
The deadline for reaching a final agreement has been pushed to the end of the month. Generally, the three countries agreed that Ethiopia would fill the reservoir in the rainy season and in volumes matching the hydrological conditions of the Blue Nile. But some issues are still hanging.
Egypt wants Ethiopia to release at least 40 billion cubic meters of water during the dry seasons. They are still negotiating this volume of water. Another issue still hanging is the joint management of the dams and water construction built over the Nile. Egypt and Sudan have already agreed on the Aswan Dam and the dams in Sudan.
Talks are set to be held on January 28 and 29. The World Bank will be monitoring the negotiations with the United States. Years of negotiations have not stopped the construction progress of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. Egypt hopes a comprehensive deal could be reached this week, one that includes enough details of implementation that could avoid further disputes in the future. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Turning our attention to some breaking news this hour, starting in Slovenia, where Prime Minister Marjan Šarec has announced that he will be stepping down from office following his finance minister's resignation from the minority government. He told a news conference just a few minutes ago that, and I quote, "With these members of parliament and this coalition, I cannot fulfill the people's expectations." In other news, a passenger jet reportedly carrying more than 80 people has crashed and burst into flames in territory controlled by the Taliban in Afghanistan. The Ariana Afghan Airlines plane went down in the remote and mountainous Dahak district in eastern Ghazni province while en route to Kabul from Herat. We will have more on these stories as and when that information comes through. For now, though, let's turn our attention to Burundi, where the ruling party, the CNDD-FDD, has picked its leader as a presidential candidate for the election in May. General Evariste Ndayishimiye is an ally of incumbent President Pierre Nkurunziza. He served as Interior and Security Minister, as well as Chief of the President's military and civilian cabinet. Just like Nkurunziza, the 52-year-old emerged from the civil war between ethnic groups, the ruling Tutsi and the Hutus. He was also a key signatory of the 2003 ceasefire that ended the conflict. President Nkurunziza is not seeking re-election. His controversial election to a third term in 2015 plunged the country into crisis.
I have the honor to announce that I accept without hesitation the honor that you have just bestowed upon me by choosing me as the candidate that the Burundians will vote for from this beautiful party of Agumyabanga for me to guide them from the month of August 2020.
Zimbabwe's second largest city, Bulawayo, is experiencing a severe water shortage, thanks in part to a drought that hit the country last year. Water levels at dams in the city have dropped drastically, forcing residents to walk for long distances in search of water. CGTN's Beryl Oro has more.
These are the scenes that greet you when you get to Zimbabwe's Bulawayo city. Most residents have been forced to go for days without running water. For Abraham Kavalanjila and his 2 sons, the hope that water supply will resume has been dwindling by the day. They, like many other residents in this area, have been forced to fetch water from an open well.
We have no option. Yeah, this water is dangerous. As you can see, just check. Someone did his rubbish here. There's nothing that we can do, you see. Yeah. But we still have to, because we need some water to use at home.
This is the water that we use, but we have to boil it first so that we can drink it. We boil the water so that we can purify it from germs, and we are able to use it for drinking and cooking.
Bulawayo City has decommissioned 2 of the water supply dams after water fell below pumping levels. The crisis has further forced authorities to ration the already scarce resource.
It's been a while. I think it's since last year. Because they ended up introducing, City Council ended up introducing 96 hours water shedding. Now we've got a problem.
It is frustrating because if the water is not there, you have to buy. I don't know how much 5 liters of water costs now, because I think it's another expense on my side. It's quite costly.
Authorities say Bulawayo's long-term solution lies in the construction of a new dam.
Actually, we're projecting that in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we might lose the 3rd dam, which is Lower Gianna. It's currently sitting just above 10% in terms of capacity. And we have also put together a paper to government for us to be declared as a water shortage area.
Zimbabwe, which is grappling with an economic crisis, is one of the Southern African nations experiencing the worst drought in years. This as climate change wreaks havoc in a country already struggling to cope with extreme natural disasters. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And let's go to Madagascar now, where at least 26 people have died after almost a week of heavy rain in the northwestern part of the island. Madagascar is in the midst of an intense 6-month rainy season. The National Bureau of Disaster Risk Management says 15 more people are still missing and thousands have been displaced. Strips of road were swept away by the rains and access to affected areas has been cut off. The flooding in lowland and rice-growing areas poses a risk of food insecurity. The government is calling on national figures and international partners to help the Malagasy people with emergency aid.
Our cattle was carried away by the water. Our chairs and covers, the bed and the mattress, and even the bed frame too. Our stock of rice is also gone.
All our food was taken away by the water, and the price of food has gone up. That's why we are suffering.
Well, let's take a quick break. Your business news up next. Coming up, foreign investors avoid the Nigerian exchange over sluggish reforms. And oil prices fall as fears of the coronavirus spread.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In your business news, foreign investors shunned the Nigerian stock exchange for most of 2019 compared to 2018. According to the latest stock exchange data, there was a sluggish investor response after reforms which were expected to lift Africa's biggest economy faded. Foreign investors traded a total of $2.6 billion worth of stocks last year compared to around $3 billion at the end of 2018. Nigeria has grappled with low growth since recovery from a recession 4 years ago. President Muhammadu Buhari, who began a second four-year term in May, has pledged to revive the economy, but investors have been waiting for policy signals that could lift growth. As with stocks, investors also cut their participation in the government bonds auction in favor of Treasury bills. The International Monetary Fund has projected that Nigeria's economy would expand by 2.5% this year and 2021. Brent crude prices dropped by 2.1% to $59.39 a barrel as fears heighten over the spread of the coronavirus. West Texas Intermediate also fell, down 2.3% to $52.94 as it emerged that the death toll had risen to 81 people. Saudi Arabia's energy minister, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman Al Saud, however, sought to calm markets. He said they are primarily driven by psychological factors and extremely negative expectations. Al Saud said such extreme pessimism occurred in 2003 during the SARS outbreak, but it did not cause reduction in oil demand. Oil prices have been hit by concerns that the flu-like coronavirus in China could spread, curbing travel and therefore demand for oil. China is the world's second largest oil consumer, and public transportation has been suspended in 10 Chinese cities. Meanwhile, Total and Tullow Oil, the main stakeholders in Kenya's Turkana oil project, are in the process of selling their stakes. Tullow intends to dispose of its entire 50% stake, while Total, which owns 25% of the project, is selling half. Oil exploration in the northern part of Kenya has encountered several hurdles. They include local community unrest and poor road infrastructure. The sale could result in Tullow's complete exit from the project, even as uncertainty looms over the project's launch date. The two oil companies have contracted French bank Nataxis to conduct the sale of the blocks in the South Lokoja Basin. The value of the Turkana oil project is estimated to be between $1.25 billion to $2 billion. Commercial production of oil in Kenya is expected to begin in 2022. However, the exit of the UK-based Tullow Oil could scuttle the entire plan. Tunisia's new Prime Minister-designate, Elias Fakhfakh, begins talks to form a cabinet this week, just days after his appointment. He has already set the priorities for his cabinet ahead of the confidence vote in Parliament. Adnan Chouachi has the details.
Elias Fakhfakh declared that the economic situation is critical. He added that 2020 will be the most challenging year in covering growing state expenses.
There are many economic priorities in 2020. That will be the year of difficulty, starting from financing the state expenses. The purchasing power is very low, and the weak production at the phosphate mining region must be tackled as soon as possible.
The Prime Minister-designate noted that Tunisia is working to gradually improve its economic indicators by means of tough yet necessary reforms.
I'll put in place a structural reform program to boost development. My government will set priorities instead of solving all problems at once. I'll not make superficial reforms. I would rather work on structural and tough social and economic change.
Fakhfakh will hold a meeting with the central bank governor and the outgoing finance minister this weekend to shed light on the latest economic indicators.
The situation is already alarming because Tunisia has a tax burden of more than 20% of GDP. It's considered the highest in the Arab region. The Prime Minister designates reforms should not be at the expense of the population or businesses. This could cause social unrest.
Leaders of political parties represented in Parliament do not oppose the choice of the President of the Republic to designate Fakhfakh to form the next government. However, the vote of confidence will depend on the composition of his cabinet and its program to face economic woes. Prime Minister-designate Elias Fakhfakh said that he will form a small political government for the sake of efficiency and effectiveness, open to high talents and to youth and women, and which is fully aware of this critical period. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
With millions of EU citizens living and working in the UK, many are worried about what might happen to them after Brexit. The government says they need to register online, a process that takes a matter of minutes, but some are fearful and are deliberately leaving it as late as they can. CGTN's Phil Lavelle travelled to rural Wales to meet one woman making a stand for now.
Nina's worried.
You just feel really powerless.
Like really worried.
A lot of anxiety.
She's German, has lived in the UK though for the best part of 20 years, most of it in Wales.
I don't think of myself as being different. I'm just a person, and I live somewhere where I really love living.
But now she's scared she's going to be kicked out, a post-Brexit casualty.
There's nothing really I can do. I have to wait for other people to make a decision of what I'm allowed to do or not.
And that is because all foreign EU nationals who've lived here in the UK for 5 years or more now have to formally register their intent, their desire to stay here. If they don't by the deadline, then they face becoming undocumented migrants. As with all things Brexit related, nobody really knows what that will mean in the long term, but one possible outcome is eventual potential deportation. There are 3.4 million EU migrants living in the UK. That is according to the British government. But campaigners say there could be anything up to 1 million more who are not known about. And up to a third may not have yet applied because they are scared of rejection or are confused by the whole process.
It doesn't seem to be such a very straightforward process. And also that we don't get any physical documentation.
Download the ID Document Checker app via an Android phone.
And that's because it's all done online. This app scans a passport and the applicant's face, but many have reported problems in using it.
People are worried about how easy is it going to, to find a job, or because landlords are now required to, to see if somebody is actually legally allowed to live here. All of those problems. And also, if we go abroad and come back, do they have it on the system or not? It's just so many questions, and we just, nobody seems to be bothered to answer them.
Now with Brexit Day happening and the deadline for applications to stay on its way, time is quite literally running out. There are no guarantees here.
Yeah, applying for jobs, I'm thinking, is that okay? Because I couldn't even promise my, my employer, oh yeah, of course I can stay, because I don't know.
Home may be where the heart is, but that might not count for much without the official nod to stay.
I don't really have a very positive outlook, but maybe that means that things can only get better if you fear the worst.
Phil Lavelle, CGTN, Llandelo in Wales.
A project being piloted in South Africa could drastically change how deliveries are done on the continent. CGTN's Julie Shire takes up the story of a German company that's using electric-powered bikes to provide cost-effective, safer and greener delivery solutions in Africa's most industrialized economy.
Sharpeville community was looking for a way to move their trash. They approached the Gauteng provincial government and were presented with electric cargo bikes made by a German company called Anywhere.Berlin.
So they've been designed and made for Africa. Our motto is forget roads, meaning that instead of spending a lot of money investing in making a road, this vehicle can actually offset that by being built for off-road. So rural villages, townships, anywhere where there are no good roads, these bikes can actually be used with ease.
The bikes transport up to 150 kgs worth of goods and are easy to navigate. An overnight charge keeps the bike going for 40 kilometers, but reliable power supply is a challenge for many African countries. They are, however, cheaper to maintain than combustion vehicles, especially for smaller businesses.
There's one guy who's actually a vendor, so he's selling some apples or vegetables. He doesn't have to store them anywhere. So he can come to a space where he actually sell them and do his business, and then after that, take them back home. Yeah, we're having an operation in Kenya where they are transporting water from the plant that is converting that water from seawater into drinkable water. And then that project is actually making it easy for villagers to access this particular water.
The e-cargo kits are manufactured in Germany and sent to Sharpeville to be built by mostly a female team.
We didn't know anything. We got to be trained by the Germans
on how to do everything on this bike, from welding, electrical, and the fitting and everything. It's mainly done here in Shovel, and we hope that it will bring change, because we're hoping that we can make as many franchises as possible in teaching people how to do this in other provinces.
This is the first micro factory in Africa where they produce about 10 cargo bikes a month, and they want to take this concept to the rest of the continent.
Julie Shire, CGTN, Sharpeville, South Africa.
Well, time for a short break. Coming up on Africa Live. The renowned Beijing Golden Sail Music Orchestra performs at the iconic Cape Town City Hall for Chinese Spring Festival.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
The renowned Beijing Golden Sail Music Orchestra performed at the iconic Cape Town City Hall in South Africa to celebrate the start of the Chinese Spring Festival this weekend. Renee Dolcom has more.
The Beijing Golden Sail Youth Orchestra is made up of 66 amazingly talented boys and girls, all aged from 9 to 11 years old. And the youngsters wowed their Cape Town audience with their highly professional sound.
I feel extremely honored to be here with the student. I think this is an unforgettable experience for especially this children. They are young children.
The orchestra is all under 12 years old. Maybe the youngest one is 9 years old. So they are so young and they play very, very well, and they can give some very strong tones, so clever in music, and they can maybe do some very, very professional things.
Both the mayor of Cape Town and the Chinese consul general to Cape Town praised the young musicians and wished everyone a happy and successful Year of the Rat.
I would like to take this opportunity to extend our New Year greetings and our best regards to all the friends who are present here. And I wish everybody a very successful and a very prosperous Chinese New Year.
We have this special concert here, so we will do the best here. So Happy New Year for the audience and for the Cape Town.
The Beijing Golden Sail Youth Orchestra has played in many famous Chinese theatres around the world. But this New Year's Symphony concert was their first performance in South Africa.
Their visit showcased the artistic, cultural exchange between China and South Africa, just one of the many strong ties that bind the close friendship between the two countries. Renee Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Meanwhile, the Chinese ambassador in Mauritius has sent his well wishes for the new year to the people of China.
On the occasion of the Chinese New Year, on behalf of the Chinese embassy in Mauritius, I would like to extend my New Year's wishes to the global audience. Wish you and your family happiness and all the best. At the same time, I take this opportunity to wish our great motherland prosperity and peace. Wish our people a happy new year and good health.
Your sports news coming up next. We take a look at the tributes pouring in for Kobe Bryant.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.